What's going on, everybody? You are listening to the Co-Living Show. My name is Craig Curlop,
I'm Miller McSwain.
and we've got this is actually probably one of my favorite episodes. One, I love Pascal, but two, I feel like he actually dropped some really good stuff. And I know I say that on almost every episode, but this one, maybe it's some recency bias, but this one I feel like I really mean it.
Yeah, no, this is a fantastic episode. You guys will hear me point out a lot Pascal's problem-solving skills. I think that was my takeaway here is that, yeah, a lot of us who started in the co-living game were having to solve all these skills or all these problems, and those problems have not gone away. There are still new problems all the time. So kudos to Pascal for kind of coming up with solutions that are super operations-based and repeatable so that he can continue to grow his business without hitting those same issues over and over and over and over.
What you're going to find real interesting about this episode is that Pascal went from he's a pretty young guy, but he's already had a bunch of different business pivots. And the most recent one being co-living, which he first started buying in 2021 when the market was absolutely bonkers. Bought 12 properties in 2 years and decided to really pursue this whole co-living thing. And of course, like when you buy things quick and you start to scale quick, a lot of things get missed. So because of all that, his rental portfolio was down to 65% occupied. And now he's been working over the last 2 years to get it occupied to 95% to now where he's actually buying more and he's more sophisticated and he's got all these systems. And so all of the problems that we're going to talk about on this episode are all problems that if you haven't run into them yet, you will. And if you're listening to the show, our mission is to help you avoid as many of these problems as possible. So make sure you listen all the way through because it truly is a fantastic episode.
All right, before we get into the show, though, we're going to take one question from the co-living community on Facebook. And this is from Paul Santana. His question is, has anyone here created an illegal bedroom, no windows, to live in yourself while house hacking and renting out the other bedrooms which are legal? Craig, do you have any experience with this, living in a bedroom with no window?
Yes. And so, believe it or not, I do. In fact, so yeah, this is what I did early on in my house hacking days. And honestly, if I was still house hacking, I probably still would take that illegal bedroom because the risk that you run into with the legal bedroom is if something were to happen to that person, then they could technically sue you. For example, if a fire happens and they can't get out and this person dies in the room, his family can then sue you for not providing an adequate living situation for them. Horrible thing in all scenarios, right? Of course, it's unfortunate that someone passed away, but also unfortunate that you're going to probably be on the hook for $1 million+. And so a simple $3,000 or $4,000 egress window can solve that problem. I highly recommend doing that when you are moved out. However, if it's just you living in the room and you own the property, if something happens to you, of course, it's unfortunate. So you do this at your own risk. But at least from the monetary standpoint, I mean, you can't sue yourself because you're dead. Your parents can't sue you because you're dead. So your parents probably don't want to sue you because you're dead. So in any case, you're safe to do that. But once you do move out, I would recommend getting that egress window just to prevent liability. The odds of something happening, of course, are so low, but the consequences are so high that I would recommend just getting it done and doing it right.
Yeah. And that being said, me and Craig both are not lawyers. So that's just kind of like Craig's experience so far. But if you are living in a room for yourself that doesn't have egress, still, it would be great for you to have an exit plan and maybe practice how fast you can run and everything. Because maybe you do need to run to get to the next egress window. So keep those exit plans in mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
I feel like Miller has thought this through.
Yeah, now that I think about it, I think maybe our bedroom didn't have proper egress when we lived in one of our co-living places. But yeah, I'm with Craig. There are people doing non-egress windows in their co-living rooms, and it's totally not worth the risk. That is a huge consequence that could happen from all those perspectives.
Paul, thank you so much for asking the question. Let's get into the show. Pascal Wagner, welcome to the show, my friend.
Happy to be here, Craig and Miller. Good to see you guys again.
Yeah, man, it's good to see your face. I feel like we're hanging out a lot this year. We'll go a couple years without talking, and now this is a good year. It's a heavy Pascal year. So
yeah, we were just at Best Ever. It feels like just a couple months ago we were hanging out in a hot tub in Colorado.
Yeah, right. Next up is hot tub in Atlanta or Miami.
Miami's next.
Yeah, you don't even need a hot tub in Miami. You just put a box of water outside, and then it becomes a hot tub, right?
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Cool. Hey, tell us where are you at right now in your co-living journey? How's your portfolio looking? Where are you at as we stand today?
Yeah. So today I sit at 104 units. We are 95% occupied. I would say we are the most profitable this year. In the last 12 months, I've been at like a 15% cash on cash return. And I think I'm going to be moving this year. I think I'm on track to do like a 25% cash on cash return, just because a lot of the investments I made over the last couple of years are now starting to pay off again. And I'm now back in buying mode and growing my portfolio.
When you say like 15 or 25% cash on cash return, like what does that mean?
That means that the $1.1 million in equity that I have invested in the deals, I'm earning whatever that math is, 160K in net income after paying my property manager, paying my maintenance tech full-time, my cleaners. I meet with my team once a week on Thursdays for our weekly L10 meeting. And other than that, I kind of view that as like passive income, what's coming in.
Okay. Wow. And what would you say is your total worth of your portfolio?
3.3 million.
3.3 million. Okay. So you're about 2/3 levered, 1/3 unlevered.
Yeah. I've got a 65% LTV, or at least when we took I bought many of them in cash, and then I did a portfolio loan, and I have a loan on at least 8 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And my interest rates are actually pretty high. I sit on an average interest rate of 7.5%. And so if we think rates are going to come down, I'm going to consider refinancing, and that should increase the cash on cash return as well.
And this is all strictly a co-living portfolio. Is that correct?
Correct. All 12 homes 11 of the homes sit in DeKalb County, Georgia, and one is outside of that, but still in Atlanta.
Okay. That just goes to show you how powerful this co-living strategy can be, is that Pascal has 11 or 12 houses, right? You could probably buy those in a few years, especially with partners. You're cash flowing, let's say 160K on a $1 million of equity at a 7.5% interest rate. Like those aren't astronomical. That can be replicated today for sure.
I also now know what I'm doing. I'm 10 years in. I started in 2014. And now that I finally have a team in place and I have wholesaler relationships, and I've now done a bunch of heavy rehabs. My first rehab was 20K, and then they got up to 50K. And this rehab I'm doing right now is 120K. And I'm now just going after bigger and bigger projects because I know that they can become more profitable. The deal I'm doing right now should be somewhere between 50 and 120% cash on cash. It kind of just depends on what the appraisal comes back for. But if it comes back as what the lender told me, then my deals are just getting better.
Okay. So I want to talk about that. Like, I think we don't talk to someone that often that is 12 years into the co-living journey. So what did that look like 12 years ago? What kind of houses were you buying? And then we'll talk about what you're buying now.
Yeah, totally. 10, 12 years ago, it was totally different. Yeah, 2014 is over 12 years ago. Damn. So when I started, my best friend, Diego Corzo, who many of you may know, I helped him buy his first house. He looked into this strategy called house hacking, read the Rich Dad Poor Dad, all that stuff, and was like, hey, I'm going to do this strategy. I'm going to buy this house. Can you loan me some money? And at the time I basically got my dad to loan him the money. and I then got to see the strategy work firsthand. He would buy like a 4-bedroom house in like Pflugerville, Texas, which is like 30 minutes north of Austin, Texas. And we'd buy the home for 180K, and the home would rent for $1,700 to as a single tenant. And we took the 4 bedrooms and had $700 per room. So that's $2,400. And that's how I watched Diego do it. He lived in the master and rented out the extra bedrooms. And then the model made sense to me. And so then we bought the next one together. And we bought 4 together in Austin. And that's kind of how that journey started.
So you started off just buying like these 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom, like type homes. I think a lot of us started there because you could, and it made sense. And we were kind of scared to have 10 people in a house because we don't know what's going to happen with 10 people in a house.
Well, the times were different.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think if you bought a 10-bedroom house back then, it would do as well as a 4-bedroom house or a 5-bedroom house?
I don't think it's fascinating to think about. I don't know. It is. I think people don't have any other choice today. And I think it comes down to choice. If 10 years ago I started doing 10-bedroom homes, I don't know if I would have been able, maybe I could have filled them and I probably would have just lowered the rent a little bit more on each of them. And it's a different product if it's 4 people sharing a kitchen than 10 people sharing a kitchen. I'm sure there's always a market.
Yeah, for sure. So you started off these 4-bed, 2-bath houses in Austin. You bought a couple of these with Diego as a partner. So how did that partnership work out? Like,
Yeah. So Diego and I went to college together at Florida State. I drove him after college. We both I did a road trip to move to Colorado and I dropped Diego off along the way. And he was basically he was becoming an agent and he knew real estate and he had access and could visit all these things. Diego was the boots on the ground and I was the money guy. And that particular partnership, because I lived in Colorado, I couldn't go there all the time. So the arrangement was he would show rooms and deal with anything that needed to be done on site. And I would do anything virtual, which was like the accounting, tax prep, maybe a screening call or something like that. And the agreement was something like I think he put down like 10% and I put down 90% of the capital. And our agreement was that he would basically do all the legwork and I would provide the money. And then he would have the ability at any point to buy up to a 50% share in the deal at the original purchase price. So if 5 years went by and the home appreciated, he could still buy in for like half of what the deal was at the beginning. And that's just what we decided was fair. And that's how that deal worked out.
cool. And so, like, how did that work out? Do you still own it?
I do not still own it. I think you don't wait to buy real estate. You buy real estate and wait. I think early on in my career, man, the appreciation that was happening, I just didn't understand to hold on to assets. And I didn't have a full strategy, I think, like I do now. At some point, I sold all the properties that I had in Colorado or in Austin and used that money to fund a startup that I was working on next. And I ended up buying a couple other pieces here and there. So I had a similar kind of deal or arrangement with another business partner, Jason Wallace, in Charlotte, North Carolina. Bought 2 homes with him. Same kind of premise. I was like a major money guy and he would do the deal. But basically, after a certain point, when it got to 2021, when my dad passed away, I kind of had to rethink my whole strategy. I had to sell everything that I had that was scattered across 2 markets. And I wanted to build a base where I could have a bunch of homes that were all driving distance from one another. And that's what multiple reasons of why I chose Atlanta, which we can get into. But I ended up selling everything and consolidating in one location.
Maybe before we talk about Atlanta and why you picked that, can you talk a little bit about having properties in 2 different markets and the pros and cons of consolidating it since you've been on both sides of that?
Yeah. I don't know what pros there are to being spread out. I think in the beginning, it was like I was looking for people to partner with. And so it was like where they lived, that was, and if the numbers made sense, I would invest, right? And I think that strategy made me very reliant on partners. And back then, there was no property management company that would manage a co-living house. And so I had to find partners that had the right incentive alignment. I think now, you got to have some sort of vision for what are you trying to do. A lot of people get into buying this real estate and 3 houses isn't going to set you free. You need to have a sizable portfolio like I do. Like I can live off $150K a year from the co-living portfolio, right? And that's at a certain size. And now that size of 12 homes, I can have a full-time property manager in the Philippines. I can have a full-time maintenance guy. I pay $60,000 a year. I can have a cleaner that is my dedicated cleaner because I pay her $30K a year. And she doesn't skimp out because she's only getting paid $5,000 a year and I'm not as important to her. So there are a lot of pros to being in one area. You have one real estate agent, you have the same county laws, you have everything becomes significantly simpler when you move in one area. And that's been my focus now, is how can I make a very tight pocket of assets?
When you have a cleaner that you're paying $30,000 a year, she's not full-time your cleaner, is she?
She's not full-time.
Yeah.
So she's like a contractor that just gets a substantial amount of business from us, and so prioritizes us. Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, dang, you got to pay her.
And to that point, right? 2 years ago, I wasn't paying that much, and I was trying to clean less frequently, or so I didn't clean at all at one point. And it's very difficult to find a cleaner that you're going to pay $600 a month. No one's getting out of bed for that. But once you say, hey, I'm going to start paying you $2,000 a month or $3,000 a month, like all of a sudden you start to get more attention. It's much easier to find talent. And that's just made me double down on my conviction of being all in one area.
This definitely comes with scale. And I know it sounds like you scaled. An unfortunate situation happened, right, with your father passing. I'm sorry to hear that. But obviously, I'm sure, did you get some sort of inheritance? Is that what happened? Or?
Yeah, it was mostly for the money I used for this was because I made a sick investment in Tesla that did a 10x. But a lot of it was for my mom and helping my mom live off of the income that she inherited from my dad.
Got you. Okay. So you invested in a startup early, which is great, or not startup, whatever, Tesla early. You had a good exit. 14x is pretty good.
Yeah, $100K to 1.5 mil.
100K to 1.5 mil. That's real. So you took all that and then you were able to buy a bunch of these co-living homes and you bought those. So now you own 12. These are 100% owned by you, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that's a caveat there too. So curious on why did you pick Atlanta? And how are you happy with your decision so far?
I'm happy with my decision for sure. Okay. I think so. I had this kind of unique opportunity. After I sold my last company, I got the opportunity to work at a venture capital firm called Techstars that invests in early stage startups. And my role there was to be like a fund and portfolio manager. And so my role was to pick Techstars had just raised this $150 million fund. And my job was to go find the 300 companies that we would invest in with that $150 million out from within the 3,000 companies in the Techstars portfolio. And so I got to see a lot of companies, everything from space companies to real estate companies. And one of those was PadSplit. And so PadSplit is a Techstars company. And I got front row seat as the person deciding which companies we're going to invest into. I got to see their pitch decks, their financials, their everything, right? And so I basically, light bulb went off and I was like, all right, first off, Techstars is investing. And then I hustled and called Atticus and Frank and was like, hey guys, you need to let me also invest in your fundraise. And so I invested 100K there, and they were centered in Atlanta. And so to me, I was like, all right, I'm going to sell everything else. I'm going to build this portfolio here, and I'm going to basically grow with PadSplit in this market. And yeah, I'm very happy with that decision. PadSplit has given great support. At the time, they built out an asset management firm and raised capital to seed the supply on the PadSplit platform. And to do that, they also needed a property management firm, which is called Two Keys. And so I worked with Two Keys, and they kind of helped me scale up. And so that was like, well, you don't have the scale to hire a full-time property manager and maintenance person. And so they knew the model, and that felt like the safest play in order to scale up and get to the size where I could hire those people internally at a later date.
Gotcha. So when you bought your first one, it sounds like in 2021. How long did it take you to get to 12?
Not long. I bought six or seven a year at the peak of the market too. Like when there were like 20, 30 offers on every home. And I basically came in and was like, look, I have this cash that's burning a hole in my wallet because inflation's at 8%. And I need to figure out how to provide income for my mom. And so I just started buying these things cash, and I could come in with a cash offer, and then I kind of refied later. And that was my strategy.
Gotcha. Awesome. I love that. And so you were able to buy these up pretty quick. What were you looking for in a home when you started? And then how has that changed?
Yeah, I think when I started, I was looking for how quickly could I generate cash, right? So does it have between 8 and 10 bedrooms? And is it generally in this south or east area of Atlanta? No pools, no septics, no HOAs, standard 1965 or newer, 2,000 square feet plus, less than half a mile from a bus stop. And yeah, basically like after reno, can I get at least a 20% cash on cash return was how I went into it with. Today, I would say my strategy's changed a lot more. I am not in a rush to deploy capital. Now my focus is, how do I buy things incredibly cheap? I have the team where I can renovate it exactly how I want to. And so now over the years, I've learned that we have the exact same paint color in every house. We have the same ceiling fans, the same door locks, the same cameras. Everything is the same. And so my vanity, my mirror, my shower, my tiling, and so I actually want to go in and make the ideal product now. I go in and I add soundproofing in the walls. I'm taking some of Miller's advice or some people from the group and adding TVs and just like really focusing on what is the ideal person want. But I also want to be able to pull all my money out and have an asset that I know has been done, renovated the right way. I don't like 5 years in, I know I don't need to fix anything because when I bought the property, I did a thorough, full renovation. So that's my thesis now.
Gotcha. I love that. So you're basically starting fresh because it sounds like maybe you've had some PTSD with deferred maintenance.
Yeah. I think part of when I had my previous property management company, just their style was they left there was a lot of deferred maintenance and there's no way to get around it. And it was a nightmare scenario. And I think that's when I came in and I just realized there needs to be a very specific structure and I need to come in and basically do a turnaround. I got to the point where my occupancy dropped to 65% in 2023. And every week I would go to them and be like, all right, what's changing this week? And I was just not ready to take on that challenge. I had a lot of other stuff going on in my life where it's not as easy as, oh, you should have caught this earlier. Yeah, I had a bunch of other stuff going on and this was not a high priority. And at some point it just got too bad and I needed to come in and I literally booked a one-way ticket to Atlanta and was like, I'm going to solve this problem and stay here until it's fixed.
Yeah. So Pascal, so these properties weren't in fantastic condition at one point. And so you went in and did you just do this like one time, like big effort to get everything up to snuff? And like, how do you think about that versus like consistently keeping it in good condition now that I think it is up to snuff?
Yeah, the ideal way is that you always keep it at the highest level. My thesis now is the only way we can really differentiate is on being excellent. Like, how do we be excellent? And what makes people stay? It's that you do the basics exceptionally well. What is that? It's making sure that the place is clean, that the bathrooms are clean, that there's no dishes in the sink. If there are dishes in the sink, we see it in the cameras, you get a fine. We see it again, you're asked to vacate. We have a very specific screening process now with an onboarding call and making sure that we're actually getting the right kind of person in. We are doing welcome baskets with basics, toilet paper, cleaning supplies, soap, whatever. Make the person feel welcome. We make sure that the trash is taken out all the time, that the grass is cut, that just all the basics. People want to live in a clean home, and you would all of the disagreements between tenants goes away when you operate at that level.
Yeah, I'm with you. So we go through our properties every 3 months and check every little thing, make sure every little thing is up to snuff. So I think, it definitely provides that good intro. If you are keeping your properties in tip-top all the time, like Pascal is doing now after he did that one big facelift. Residents come in, they get that good intro. Also, you give a lot better tours. So with co-living, we constantly have people coming in and out. So it's pretty imperative that, yeah, we're keeping this thing looking great, smelling great as often as we can, because there are people coming in and out. And then plus, yeah, they're going to stay longer because of it. So I don't have great data to compare this, but I would guess if you're waiting to deferring your maintenance and then you come in and do this one big boom and get everything up to snuff, it probably would have been cheaper just to consistently maintain it every few months.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. Plus all
Without
these
a
other
doubt.
benefits. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I want to highlight a point here, which I'm hoping someone takes away. I think early on in my journey, and I think these are the ideal properties to buy properties from, are the people that just don't keep the property up to standard. And just that makes a big difference. I think before, I don't think I cared or understood how much of an impact it made. And I was more short-term thinking about like, oh, I don't want to spend that money. Man, I did not want to spend money on cleaning. And at one point I was doing cleaning once a month, and that still wasn't really doing it. And we went to 2 weeks, and then we went to every week. And then I realized I could not afford every week. And then we went to 3 weeks, and we kind of realized the sweet spot is every other week for us right now. And so, yeah, I think keeping everything in good condition and being proactive is, I think, changes how profitable you will be moving forward. I think the better way is to go buy properties with that in mind, that you are going to have those expenses, and then just have a more focused buy box or a smaller buy box because of that. And I'm okay with that.
So, Pascal, when you were like down at 65%, was it mainly this deferred maintenance thing that caused that, where the houses weren't clean, dishes weren't in the sink, people didn't know what was going on? Was that 90% of the issue, or was there any pricing or any market conditions or anything like that?
No, it was definitely all maintenance for sure. I think maintenance makes it a little too simplistic. Yes, there was a lot of deferred maintenance. Like at one point I did a visit and there were holes in the wall. There's this book by Malcolm Gladwell, I think it's called, I forget which one it's called, but he talks about this concept of this train. And if people graffitied the train, if they just left the graffiti, it would actually get significantly worse very quickly. But if they cleaned it up, the train stayed pristine for longer. And I think that same concept applies to where people live. And it was also the culture, right? I think it's everyone tries to push the boundaries. And until you get pushback, you will continue to get issues. So until we got to the point where it was like, all right, I'm fed up with people leaving dishes in the sink, I'm adding a camera. You don't like it, you can leave. You leave dishes in the sink, you're going to get a fine. You leave dishes in the sink again, you're asked to leave. And very quickly, everyone else in the house starts to see they mean business, and they understand the repercussions because they see it happening to other people, and it changes the entire tone of the house. So yes, there was a lot of deferred maintenance, but I don't think you can have that kind of like my way or the highway, like these are the rules, and not take care of the property. Yeah.
As you switched from more of a laid back management style to a more no joking around, did you see your occupancy drop at all? Did people move out? Was that a problem?
The wrong people moved out, and my occupancy and my tenure went up.
Okay. So there is this minimal, like really short-term pain for like people are moving out.
Very minimal.
Yeah. But when you've got one house or two houses, like that could feel like the world, especially if it's like, I just got these things filled up, right? But the whole reason why we're interviewing Pascal is because he's 12 years experienced. He's made all the mistakes that we're all making. And so rather than just duplicate Pascal's mistakes, let's learn from them, and let's just keep our houses nice and clean and give them a good product to work with, and everyone will win.
Yeah, look, I think one of the other realities that I think relate to this is, you said, oh man, it took me so long to fill this house. Or I think I think the market tells all, right? I am personally, my strategy when it comes to filling rooms is I would rather keep rooms filled and focus on long-term tenureship and occupancy than to squeeze out an extra 10 or 20 bucks a week, because that room sitting empty, needing to clean that room, needing to give the first 10 days of rent to pad split for that room. I think I looked it up. It was like every time a room becomes empty, it costs me at least $1,500 or $2,000. And so it's like, all right, I would rather just, if my room is sitting for longer than 20 days, I'm lowering the price. I'm trying to get people in there. I'm trying to make it. And the market's gone down over the last 3 years. Rents have compressed. That's part of the market. Sitting here wishing, oh, I really need to get more. I think that's the wrong approach. And I think you're going to lose in real estate if you do that way. And you need to buy properties with enough margin of safety to where you can weather those storms, right? Like what I'm doing now, buying new homes, like trying to build a lot of equity and pull most of my money out. So if rents compress or if the real estate market tanks 30%, that like I'm still in good shape.
Yeah. I think pricing is super important here. I think it's something that all investors of all different strategies get super hard-headed about, especially if you're at mom and pop level and you're not looking at all this data and doing all that. So I remember when we bought our second house, it was in a better part of town. And in my first house, I was getting around $750 per room that shares a bath. So we went to this better part of town and I underwrote $850 because I was like, oh, totally. People would pay $100 more a month because it's in a better part of town. And we listed our rooms at that. And they were sitting for, I don't know, the longest one probably sat for 3 or 4 months. And eventually I was like, man, I know I underwrote $850, but really when you look at this vacancy, it is killing you every single month that a room is sitting vacant. So instead, I think we dropped that price by $20. And boom, within 2 weeks, now we're filled up, right? So I would encourage you guys to not be maybe so stubborn on that. And shameless plug, Co-Living Pro is now launched. So you guys can go check that out. We do dynamic pricing for your rooms there. So that's a new tool in the space. Hey guys, the tool I've been talking about forever, Co-Living Pro, is now officially live. So some of the biggest problems that I've encountered around co-living are always on the marketing side. So you can think of Co-Living Pro as a marketing software or a tool to help you overcome some of these marketing issues that we all run into in the co-living space. So number one, it helps you determine what to price your room at and then how to change that price over time. And that's actually a free tool. You can go there to colivingpro.io and there's a little like rentometer type tool where you can punch in an address, punch in a zip, punch in a city and kind of see what rooms might rent for there. But it does that for you. And number two, historically, for us to keep our rooms operating at full capacity, especially when we're off a pad split, it's meant that we had to post on Zillow, post on Zumper, post on Apartments, post on Roomies, post on all these places. And with just a 5-bedroom house, that's already 20 listings right there, which is a lot of work, a lot of time and effort. So Co-Living Pro helps you solve this. You just make your listing on this one site and it pushes it to Zillow, pushes it to Zumper, and we even support any platform with the manual listing manager. So you can still be on Apartments, still be on Roomies, still be on Pad Split, still be on anything. And it's kind of a wizard that helps you stay organized, your VA stay organized. It shows you what rooms need to be posted where with just quick copy paste prompts. Copy your rent over, copy your description over, boom, you're good to go. And number three, historically, now that you're on all these sites, we always had to hop in daily or at least weekly to keep these listings up at the top, keep the pricing up to date. So Co-Living Pro solves that for you too. It's making those adjustments for you on a daily basis, even an hourly basis, to make sure your listings are updated across your platforms. So you guys know everything I've always done has been free. The community is free. This podcast is free. I'm super proud of that and definitely going to keep doing all that. But this tool is paid, but I feel comfortable doing that because the numbers are honestly pretty insane. So if you go to Co-Living Pro, there is a calculator where you can do this for your own situation. But let's take that example earlier of the 1 5-bedroom property. From that, we estimate you'll make an extra $1,400 a year in extra rent and reduced vacancy. And that is 5x what the tool costs. Let me say that again. This tool produces 5x the return of what it costs. So in this example, that's actually a better return than most co-living properties themselves, being around 15, 16%. So seriously, to me, this is a no-brainer. So head over to colivingpro.io. This is the tool that I built for my own business, and I'm so happy that I can finally share it with you guys. And back to the episode.
I have been going back and forth on this concept of pushing rents. I have a lot of friends in commercial real estate, and the coaching I get from a lot of them is that I need to keep raising prices, pushing rents. And it could be that I am earlier in my journey and I don't fully understand the concept, or I understand what they're trying to say, but at the moment, I don't feel like that works for our asset class. And the reason is because our people can get up and leave within a couple weeks. And raising rent on someone who has a year-long lease, who is maybe less price sensitive because they're already paying thousands of dollars, is very different, I think, than someone who has no lease and is very price sensitive.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to play a little bit of a different game. And so I've been thinking a lot about pricing lately.
Yeah. I think I'm with you on that. Maybe like the crux or the key here is that co-living is mostly serving people who need like a very affordable option. Like they have very hard limits on what they can afford to pay. And again, yeah, maybe we're too early in our journey too, but definitely I see where people start to raise prices and do all that as they're like consolidating their customer base and getting it down to what's the 20% of people that have the most money that would spend the most money. And we're in this space where it's the opposite for co-living. The way that we're finding success is doing a lot of volume at a lower price. And yes, I would love to cut the number of tenants down to 10% and then make X percent more, but that may not be our customer. But maybe in the future, there is a spot where you stop and you're like, hey, I'm not going to grow anymore. I'm going to take my 12 houses. I'm going to make them more luxury or something like that. It's like maybe there is a play there, but at least in scale mode, most of the demand is from that tenant who needs like the super affordable product, which price raising would go against.
Yeah, one of our friends out in Boston, he does co-living at a pretty big scale, and he renovates all his houses to the nines. These are beautiful homes. They all have their own private bath. You're going to pay $2,000 for a room, which is Boston prices, plus they are really nice. And it just attracts a different tenant. It attracts a different person. You got a doctor that's living in this room because they're chill, right? You're not going to see a doctor living in one of our co-living homes. Pascal, I want to talk a little bit about your kind of transition from, it sounds like you bought stuff a little bit more turnkey in the beginning, maybe just add a few bedrooms and whatnot, but now you're doing these bigger rehabs. And so how did that kind of transform? And then also, would you recommend somebody just starting out to get right into the bigger rehabs? When do you make that leap?
I think, yeah. What happened? So I bought all the portfolio within 2 years, and then I kind of just maintained and got my operations in order, I guess you could say. And now I was like, I think you have to build on top of skills. I think one skill is knowing how to manage my books and be able to have incredibly clean financials. A skill is knowing how to do due diligence. A skill is being able to build a network of agents or people who send you deals. Then I had a maintenance guy that I've worked with for the last 2 years that I trust, that knows how to do everything that the way I want it, knows what my standards are. And so I think doing this in the beginning would have been significantly harder. And so I don't think anyone should just jump right in and do that. If you already know how to renovate houses, then by all means, I think it's the ideal way to go, right? You're doing a full-on buy, rehab, refinance, rent, refinance, and repeat. But I missed the second part of your question.
I guess let's talk about like when you are looking at doing your renovation, we talk about the refinance part, right? At what point do you refinance during your renovation?
I refinance after the thing is full. I've had issues
at 10 bedrooms, 11 bedrooms, whatever.
Yeah, after that, I've had issues with appraisers. And I think what really matters is just who is your lender and who are you working with? And do they know? I went to my insurance company. I'm open book. I tell everyone everything. And I think that if you're going to do this, I think that's the way to be. I think for several years, if I got a notice in the mail from the city or anything like that, like I would panic and I had sleepless nights. And like now I know how to deal with all of that and I have a process. But I think, man, I keep losing my train of thought.
It's all good. I think it's a really good topic. So we're talking about the refinance on a co-living property, and there are definitely concerns with this. So Pascal, your approach is you're telling everybody actually what you're doing, right? You're being upfront with your lender, and then so they know how to handle the appraisal situation and everything. I guess what I would like caution people here is know if you're being upfront with your lenders and all the vendors that you're working with or not, because we do see a lot of issues where, yeah, people go ahead and get their property up to the 10 bedrooms. Then the appraiser comes in and they're like, what the heck? There's no comps to support any valuation on this property because there's no other 10 bedrooms in this zip code. It's a super weird thing to happen. But you are being upfront and you're seeing success with them being okay with 10 beds.
Yeah. And look, then you go back to the lender comes back to me and they're like, hey, the appraiser had trouble and they said they couldn't do it. They refused to do it. So they just hired another appraiser. And it's cool because the lender and I are on the same page. Mm-hmm. It's fine, right? What I would hate is that my house burns down and I didn't tell my insurance broker and then they don't pay me. What terrible position to be in. And I've just realized I have a stance. My stance is, hey, county, you are giving rights to people with familial status that you are not giving unrelated people. And you are breaking the law. You are breaking federal fair housing law. And that is my stance. And so when I go in and I talk to the insurance broker and everyone's, this is a gray area. I don't know if I feel comfortable. And I'm like, okay, this is what I'm doing. Are you on board or not? If not, I had to call 35 lenders to get my portfolio loan done. But just like in any piece of real estate, you should have, over the years, you should have a ton of different connections, right? There's 30 agents and 10 wholesalers and 5 insurance brokers, and you get leverage from being able to talk to a lot of people. And I think that if you're going to go down this route, that's one of the things that you need to do.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you were mentioning brokers there. So at least my personal belief here is any sort of vendors or your lending, your insurance in particular, I'd much rather go with a broker, meaning that for insurance, I'm not going to Nationwide and talking directly to Nationwide. I'm talking with someone who's local, who has connections with Nationwide, Safeco, Travelers, Farmers, like whatever. Same idea with the lender. When we work with a lender, it's a broker who's working with a bunch of different lenders. And personally, I do feel much more comfortable being upfront with a broker. I think they're more likely to understand your situation because they're used to unique situations where they're shopping 10 different companies at the end of the day to look for something that works specifically for you. And with co-living, yeah, there's lots of lending that doesn't work for it, lots of insurance that doesn't work for it. So I definitely do feel more comfortable opening up to those kind of guys. And I do think it's super important to, anytime you talk with any vendor, any meetup you're at, anything like that, save all of those contacts. Yeah, there might be an insurance agent that's talking at the meetup that you go to locally. You don't need an insurance agent right now. Okay, well, I'm still saving every one of those contacts because there will come a time where you will start to make some use of those. But yeah, double click on the brokers there. I think that's a good point.
For sure. Yeah, hey, Pascal, like when you're looking at in the acquisition and a wholesaler brings you a deal, what are you looking for in the rehab to add the most value? Are you looking more for like the co-living side? Are you looking more for how do you add value and pull as much money out as possible? And how do you balance the two?
I think it's a combination. I think I can tell you about the last deal I just took down that I'm in the middle of, which is like this. They brought me this property. It's 160 grand. After rehab value in the neighborhood would be like 350 grand. And this place needed complete everything. It had mold, it had termites, it had everything is overgrown, and it needed a new HVAC, needed everything. And so to me, I think what I've realized is if I'm buying a house and I am not the one buying all the appliances, they might crap out at me in the next couple of years versus if I'm replacing it, I know how long it's going to last. And if I'm going to be ripping out everything and customizing it, like I want to get the thing that needs the most work so that I'm not like retiling the bathroom, which already has good tile. I just think it's hideous or it's not part of my vibe that I'm going for. Right. So I think all the things have to make sense, but now I have an understanding of what things cost. I know what I'm optimizing for. So for example, what are some of the biggest problems that people have in their co-living units? It's sound. I can hear people running up and down the stairs. I can hear the person listening to TV or blaring their music. And I'm going through and I'm adding soundproofing in every single wall to try and solve that issue ahead of time. I'm like when I'm looking at a house, I'm mapping out, okay, where are the 2 or 3 fridges going? Does it make sense? Is it all in the kitchen, or do I need to put a refrigerator in this weird hallway because I didn't have room? And so I'm kind of I'm thinking about what that experience is like and how does it come together. And I get to be pickier now. And so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's huge. I think probably the biggest benefit is basically starting fresh. And I kind of what you said, where it's really tempting to go into, we're just buying one now, like an older home that has this old lady living in it, that it's in great condition. It's just like 1970s, but like it's great condition. And you don't want to take it down, but the vibe's not there. So, what do you do? By replacing the tile, you're going to spend 2 or 3 grand, but you're not going to add any value. So I like
Right.
that. Yeah. It's an interesting perspective. Cool, man. Awesome.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to dive into some of your ops, Pascal. So it seems like you've kind of gone through this. You started out in Austin, and then a few years later, now you're doing a lot more stuff in Atlanta, and you've gotten things much more professionalized. Things are getting better, better, better. You're definitely an optimizer. So kind of curious, maybe we can rapid fire some of these. But you mentioned, this might have been before we hit record, but that you have done some experiments with house managers specifically. Maybe can you talk a little bit about what is the definition of a house manager, and what were you doing, and what are you doing now? What does that look like?
Yeah. So concept of that, what was the problem I was trying to solve? The problem I was trying to solve is cleanliness inside the home and making sure that the trash was taken out on a weekly basis. So what are my options to solve that problem? I could hire a cleaner, or I could hire maybe someone who's living in the home that could also be my eyes and ears and actually let me know what's happening on the ground, because people tend to have different stories about what's happening. And I played around with a bunch of different models. It was ultimately something like $75 a month, as long as you submitted before and after photos of cleaning the bathroom, the kitchen sink, the kitchen, basically the common areas, and taking out the trash. And they would have to post photos of all the trash bins on the street in order to get credit to get paid. And I think ultimately, house managers are not cleaners. And if I have also, I guess throughout the year, if I'm paying, let's call it $1,000 for easy math per house manager per year, because maybe they also do some landscaping and we had our maintenance guy drop off the lawnmower or whatever. Now across 12 homes, that's $12,000. And so, okay, I think I would rather hire someone whose main job is to clean, and when they don't do a good job, I can fire them and hire someone else. And now there's a bigger pot of money that's worth doing a good job for, rather than splitting that across $1,000 over the year for one person is not like a huge driver. And so I think that was why. So we just actually eliminated that program 2 months ago and moved completely to the cleaner approach. And yeah, I'm not going to go back for sure.
Yeah. I think it's a really good point about firing. Yeah. Whenever you are hiring everything out, you have the option to fire someone and then bring someone else new in, like, pretty easily. But if it's your tenant who's doing things, it's like a conflict of interest. It's, oh man, they're not doing a good job cleaning. I would love to fire them and get someone else to do it. But if I fire them, am I going to lose that income stream too? Are they going to move out of the house also? So like, it gets kind of complicated there. But I do think whenever you start off with co-living, there are lots of spots within co-living where you can get scrappy. It's like the scrappiest strategy of all, I feel like. So you could be living in the house, you could be doing your own cleaning, you could be not living in the house, getting a house manager to do it. But definitely as you do start to scale, we've just seen a lot of benefits to outsourcing and removing responsibilities from the tenants as much as possible. Because even the issue that we hit, Craig and I took over some properties and they were doing like the house manager type strategy. And whenever someone moves out of the house, now you have to select someone else to start doing all these responsibilities. And when you're at a certain scale, you just don't really know everyone anymore. Like when I had 3 houses, I knew every single person that lived in them. I could walk down the street and say, hey, like it would make sense. But when you're at 20, like how do you know who to pick next? So there's like some complications that come up, and it becomes easier to outsource, at the very least, as you start to scale. All right, Pascal, also you mentioned a welcome basket earlier. When did you start doing that, and what are you providing to them? And is that proving to be a benefit?
Yeah. So the welcome basket. Look, I think what I did is I took a step back and I said, what is the ideal user experience? I know that many of my friends that we know run Airbnbs, and the ideal Airbnb experience is you come into your unit and there's a bottle of champagne there, right? So I kind of set that as the experience. And I'm also, maybe let me take a step back. What I was trying to solve for was reducing the number of people who move out within the first 90 days. Our 90-day churn is 50% right now. And it's been coming down. It was at 55, targeting 40, 45. And what are all the things that we could do to improve that experience? It was, we could set better expectations on the phone. We could filter out maybe people who aren't a good fit for our home or are only playing for a short amount of time. Before they arrive, they get some sort of welcome kit that explains all of the things that they are going to have questions about. How do they get into their room? How to use the door lock? Where to put their stuff in the kitchen? So that we created a welcome guide. Then when they get into their room, what's the ideal experience there? Is it, okay, there's a nice note from us that says, welcome to your home. And there's a little box, which has like a mug, soap, cleaning supplies, toilet paper, just a lot of the essentials that I know that these people need and are helpful as they move in. And then lastly, what we did is we have a follow-up process where we call them the day of move-in, the week after move-in, and then 30 days after move-in to just make sure they feel like they are cared for. I think there's a lot to this idea that people can feel whether you care. And so we've put a lot more effort into that. And I think we've seen a direct reflection in people staying and being happier.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So I really love how every time I ask you one of these questions, you're like, okay, let me step back and what was the problem that I was trying to solve? So I really want the listeners to take that away. So what I would say is there may be like non-problems out there that people are trying to solve, but really if you step back and think about it, what is the core issue and what are potential solutions? Like when you listen to me, Craig, Pascal, Dave, like all these different guys, we can definitely give you a great starting place. Okay, we already know the solution for trash. We know the solution for cleaning, but we did have to come up with those, all of us, on the fly because the education wasn't quite there yet. And we haven't encountered every problem there is yet. There are still new problems that come up that you will have to solve in your portfolio, maybe unique to your market. And there's still problems that come up for us. For example, right now we're having a new issue. Now that we've had properties for 3 years, 4 years, stuff like that, there are items that are accumulating in storage areas, in different cabinets that aren't assigned. We have a lot of them that are assigned. And we have to do the same thing that we did back in the day, the same thing that Pascal's doing now. What is the issue? What are potential solutions? And that's kind of how we're giving them I think you were saying excellent experience. You guys strive to be excellent. So I think it all stems from your problem solving ability though.
Yeah. Totally can second what Miller said. I'm curious on your cleaning. I know you keep your places pretty clean. You got your cleaner every other week, but stuff can still get messy in that time period. How do you keep them accountable? What's your accountability like with keeping it clean? I know you got the camera for the dishes, but that's only a small portion of keeping a place clean.
Yeah. Look, I think there's not that much common area. And the 3 common areas are kitchen, laundry room, and bathrooms for us. Bathrooms, we obviously can't put cameras. And so we do occasionally still have issues there. Tenants will complain about other tenants. And if our philosophy is that if there are more than 2 people, or if there's more than one person complaining about you, then we have issues, right? Hey, this person keeps leaving the bathroom nasty. Look, you either get it fixed and make sure they don't complain or you're out, because I have multiple people complaining about you. It's not the other way around. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I also think that the people who leave dishes in the sink and are messy there, or leave the laundry area messy, are the same people who are leaving the bathroom messy. So I think by being strict where you can be, you either remove those people or it sets the same tone. Now, we still have some cleanliness issues with the bathroom every now and again, but not any. I barely think about it.
Yeah.
If at all.
So earlier, Pascal, I think you mentioned fees as like a potential penalty for certain items. Are you guys implementing fees as far as like cleaning goes? As like
I am. Pad Split has to hold me back on the fees. We just had someone drive through the backyard with their car and it left some divots in there. And I was like, you're going to get a fine. I call that the stupid tax. You're being stupid. You're going to get a tax for that. Think. And love giving out fines.
Okay.
We make 10% of our annual revenue comes from late fees and fines.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So then maybe like tactically, like in your lease or your membership agreement or whatever, you can't put that it's this percentage for the stupid tax, right? So are you actually putting anything into documents to let them know what fees are ahead of time? Or it's, hey, here's a warning. Next time, this is what the fee is going to be.
No. So Pad Split has a list of fees that you are allowed to charge to their members. And so we have to basically stay between that. What we're doing now is anytime someone leaves, and if they were an eviction and they left behind a mess, we'll document that and we'll add that to their bill. And then we go after them on a credit report. And so that's like a new strategy. We're trying to recoup a lot of those losses. But it's part of our onboarding process. We say, hey, when we have the call with the person, there's a script. And part of that script is, hey, look, whether you've lived in shared housing or not, here's how this works. My expectation, like this place is going to be clean. We have a cleaner come through every 2 weeks. If you do things stupid, if you leave dishes in the sink, if you see other people leave dishes in the sink, let us know. We have cameras. We find those people. We see that happen again. We ask them to leave. And so we kind of always frame it as, hey, if you see other people doing this, let us know. And so that lets them know what the standards are. And that we also promote a tattle culture. And that is the expectation for the house. We are not screwing around. This is what it's like. And the right people love that. Love that. Because someone is holding, I think probably when I think about and just read a lot of these posts online in the Facebook groups about people who do co-living, it's just like property managers not holding their tenants accountable, letting their tenants walk over them and not discipline them. I think for me, my thought is we don't have a rule that we cannot enforce. And so that way we always uphold our word.
Yeah. I think that's huge. Kind of like building this culture, like the tattle culture or like whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so we started out with a different management style, similar to you. And then over time, like it kind of shifted. But I will say houses there's a little bit of a settling time, I think. Whenever you set up a new house, there's different people coming in, different ideals, like you set the rules, the tattle culture, whatever. People may not always follow it. But then a year into it, you do get that churn and you get the people who are more similar in the house to each other and who are all going to be like following the culture. So like the beginning, I think people don't talk about how like tumultuous and like the churn and all that, like of the beginning of a co-living house. But given a year and a half, all that does start to settle and you get the right people in there that do follow the rules. And then if someone does come in who's not into that culture, they're probably part of your the 90-day churn or like whatever you were calling it, Pascal, and they'll get out. But 2 turns later, you'll have the right guy in and they'll stay there for a long time. So don't discount the initial churn. It'll happen, but it's good in the long run.
Awesome. Pascal, you've dropped a lot of bombs on us today, and I think you've provided tons of value. And I could sit here and talk to you, as I have before, for hours, and maybe with our shirts off in a hot tub. That always gets things going. But let's move into the final part of the show. You ready?
Let's do it.
It's time for the big three. Boom.
Boom.
All right. Pascal, what is the number one tool that you could not live without?
Number one tool I cannot live without. I'm going to assume this is co-living related.
Yeah.
And I'm going to, I don't know, Slack in my Pad Split dashboard. Eufy, the security cameras.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't think it was a hammer for you. I figured it was probably software. So that's in line.
Yeah. That drill
cool. All right. Question number 2. What's one transaction, renovation, or housemate story that you experienced? Like crazy story, like this is story time. And what did it teach you?
Ask the question one more time.
Okay. What's one transaction, renovation, or housemate horror story that you experienced, and what did it teach you?
They don't really faze me now anymore. I think probably my biggest, I've had a tree fall on my house, cause a $70,000 renovation. I am I think that's something I didn't appreciate before, is understanding how much trees can be a liability around your home. And I think just people dying, having your team find people not alive in their rooms is a new experience. If you're a landlord, you'll eventually run into. That's not pleasant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So Pascal, earlier you mentioned that you'd be worrying about these portfolio issues when you were going to bed, not being able to sleep, sleepless night, things like that, which I think a lot of investors do experience. But now you're saying that you're not worried about that stuff too much. You can't even think of big issues off the top of your head. So is there anything that changed, like in your mind or in your portfolio, that made you less worried about some of these operational bits of co-living?
Yeah, I think it's having gone in and put my processes in place and my people, and I now know when to check. I have a weekly check where I meet with the team, give my 2 cents on what's happening, but I mainly have a property manager that's driving and handling things. And a lot of it's getting the team in place, building the right SOPs, having the cash flow and the occupancy in order to make the investments to make the homes in a better condition so that later I don't have issues, right? I think last year was a big thing for me where I invested a ton of money in just repainting every house the same color, and just trying to tackle all of the issues that I known we have once and for all with different experiments. I'm constantly running different experiments to try and reduce the issues that we have, right?
Yeah. So I think it all comes back to that problem solving. And you experience an issue twice, build something so that it's not an issue in the future. And like a year or two in, you do have most of the problem solved. Like Pascal said, though, he's still hopping into that weekly L10 meeting, and they're probably solving some new issues, but all the basics, like pretty quickly, can get covered if you operationalize, systematize, and then you can sleep soundly. Cool. All right, Craig, question number 3.
Number 3, outside of this podcast and our co-living Facebook community, where are you learning the most about co-living today?
I have a cool accountability group that meets once a month that, Craig, I'm shocked you're not a part of, but Miller and I hang out regularly and just talk shop, right? And there's, I don't know, 5 or 10 people, and everyone talks about what they're currently struggling with and what they're trying out and what they've learned. And everyone's like at, I would say, a similar skill or portfolio. Some of them have bigger portfolios, but their business model is different. So yeah, just helpful to have connections of real operators that are doing it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think that's interesting too, that it's like there's value in being around people of a similar skill level, similar portfolio size. And then at the same time, you can still learn from me, Craig, Pascal, whatever. You can learn from people who are ahead too. But being around people at a similar stage is hugely helpful also. All right, Pascal. So let's get you out of here. Last thing for you. Where can listeners find you, learn more about you, and connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm most popular. My main platform is LinkedIn. So you can just LinkedIn/Pascal Wagner. You'll see that I talk a lot about LP investing. So investing in other operators' deals. And that's the co-living thing, is just my own portfolio on the side that I do. And that's where you can learn more.
Awesome. Pascal, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on board here, my friend. Love to hear about what you're doing, and love to...
Yeah, great to be here, guys.
Yeah. One more thing real quick, just to kind of like recap this is, dude, it's awesome that you kind of had, I just like realize this now, like you scaled quick, bought 12 properties in 2 years, kind of had an oh crap moment that the properties weren't there. And I just love that you were able to like take 2 years of not growing the portfolio to just optimize it. That takes a bit of humbling that I don't know that I need to probably do that. But I'm just like, man, if I'm not growing, like, what is this? So good on you, man. Seriously, for recognizing that and taking action on it.
Appreciate that, man.
Yeah. Cool. Pascal, good to talk to you, bro. We'll see you next time somewhere, someplace. We'll talk
Thanks,
soon.
guys.
Later. And that was Pascal Wagner. Miller, what'd you think of Pascal?
Yeah, what a treat to be able to talk to someone who's been doing co-living since, what do you say, like 2014?
Yeah,
Like
2014.
Probably our longest tenure. Maybe Clara was that longer potentially, but I've been in the space for 3 or 4 years. Craig's been in it, I don't know, 6, 7. Oh God, we'll just say 7 or 8 years, and we'll just leave it there. But hearing from somebody who's been doing it for so long, and it's worked out a lot of those operational kinks, that's of huge value, I think.
Yeah. And for the record, Miller, I did buy my first co-living property in 2018. So it is 8 years,
Okay.
which is crazy. I don't know, man. I used to think people were so annoying when they said this when I was like younger in my 20s. And they're like, wow, time just flies by. But I can't believe I've been doing this for 8 years.
Yeah.
And dude, I don't know. It just blows my mind. I feel like time speeds up. Time goes too fast.
Yeah.
What's your like rocket scientist type reasoning for that? Give me some logic. Why does time speed up every year?
I don't know. I feel like me and my wife were talking about this the other day. You know how people say, oh, like that event felt like so long or whatever. So like it was probably like a bad event. People are like, oh, it's not good if it feels like it was a long time. I feel the opposite. If something feels like kind of stretched out, we were talking about, oh, we've lived in Colorado for 3 or 4 years and it feels like it's been longer. But we're like, we've really enjoyed our time. So maybe we just think different than other people though, because we're like special and all that.
Yeah, you are special.
Yeah, very special.
Yeah, you've been told that many times, haven't you?
Yeah, that's what the conversation was. Me and my wife both felt so special.
Yeah, love it. Cool. Thank you guys all for listening all the way through. If you got to this part, again, Pascal, I don't even know if we ended up talking about Pascal in this outro. We just got into time speeding up. But anyway, some things that I guess one thing that I really loved about Pascal in his episode is one, like you said, like his ability to problem solve and think and take a step back and just be like, what is the problem? How do we address it? And this problem with occupancy, which a lot of people are having right now, is, and he's at 95% occupancy, mind you. So yes, everyone is having a problem, but Pascal has figured out a potential solution. And what he said was like the one thing is give these people a fantastic experience. If you can stop the bleeding and stop people moving out, it is much easier to keep your occupancy high than it is to constantly find and cycle through new people. So that, I thought that was huge. And I thought some of the stuff that he shared, just like with some of his house systems and the militant style systems he's got in place and all that, which has proven to be a big thing.
Yeah. And I think that there's a time and a place for stopping the growth like Pascal did and optimizing what you currently have. And like you were saying earlier, huge kudos to him for being able to do that, because I know a lot of people in the space, and Craig and I are super tempted to do this, but that continue to acquire before everything with the current portfolio is stable. So that is why Pascal's making 160 grand a year or whatever in cash flow, while other people, maybe they have more rooms, but they're not making 160K a year. They're making much less because yeah, they have rooms, but they're vacant.
Yep. 100%.
Cool.
Awesome. Miller, time has just sped up so fast through this whole episode. That means we didn't enjoy it.
That means I didn't enjoy it, but I'm more special than you are.
You didn't enjoy it, but you're more special.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll say I didn't enjoy it too, so then double negatives is a positive, so that way everybody else will enjoy it.
You just want to be special with me.
Kinda. Yeah. Can you give me that?
Yeah, no, all right, that's fine. We'll both be special. It's all good. One time only.
Okay, sweet. I can't wait for the customized wrapping paper to come out.
Yeah.
Cool. Hey, if you guys listen all the way through, thanks so much. If you guys could leave us a rating review, let us know how we're doing. Reach out to us on Instagram. I'm Craig Curlop.
I'm at Miller McSwain.
And let's see you guys next week. Peace.
Peace.